Ruby Frankie, the YouTube vlogger that has now been arrested on 6 felony charges for child abuse. So let's get into it. But before we get into it, I'm Elise Bradley. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for stopping by. Remember to do all the things, like, subscribe, comment below, be nice in the comment section, please, and blah, 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 blah. You may have heard of Ruby Frankie. She is a YouTube vlogger, and she's actually pretty well known for her channel called 8 Passengers. She's been on YouTube since 2015, and she actually had over 2.3 million followers on the channel. Her channel was based around giving advice to other parents of how she parents in a strict, obedient way towards her children that people did criticize. Because if somebody is putting up their parenting style on YouTube and it looks controversial already, just imagine what was happening behind closed doors. But everything came to a head when Ruby's son was at her business partner's home, Jody Heidebrand. I don't know if I'm going to say that right. And the child escaped through Jody's window to then be discovered by a neighbor. He was seeking food and water because he was severely malnourished. They said malnourished. They didn't say severely. And when he was discovered by the neighbor, he actually had duct tape on his arms and legs. When the neighbor proceeded to call the police and the police arrived, they did notice deep lacerations from being tied up by rope, on top of him being malnourished. So he was then sent to the hospital for further evaluation. Obviously, the police are like, I'm going to go check out this woman Jody's home because I'm suspicious of what else is going on. So when entering the home and doing a investigation of the place, they discover Ruby Frankie's daughter, who's 10 years old. She's also malnourished, and they do send her to the hospital as well. So all this took place on August 30th, and Jody and Ruby were both arrested that day. They were placed in police custody and without bond, without bail, without bond. They can't get out. Basically, they can't get out. To get to how we got here in this investigation, we got to start from the beginning. So let's start with Ruby. Ruby is a 41-year-old mother from Ivan, Utah. Of course, she's Mormon. I really didn't expect her not to be Mormon. And she is extremely involved in her faith. She's not making Mormons look so good. And she was married to a man named Kevin Frankie. And they had a total of 6 children together. They started their YouTube channel back in 2015, and they have produced over 1,000 videos. But the YouTube channel was actually taken down. I don't know if it was by YouTube or it was by Ruby herself, but it was taken down earlier this year in 2023. And that is when she decided to move over to like a podcast channel, YouTube channel with her friend Jody. And they started a podcast channel called Connections. And it revolved around discussing mental health curriculum and counseling services structured around the values that these women both believed in, basically. When she did talk about disciplinary actions that she was taking against her kids when they did things that she thought were wrong, she acted like, honestly, a drill sergeant. And one of her biggest things was taking food away from them, which is just really sad. I mean, honestly, it's just really sad. It is a form of child abuse that is very emotional, and it's like she had all the control and she wanted all the control. Most of her videos that went viral, though, were of the children and showing them at their most vulnerable states, especially when she was disciplining them. I don't know. There's so many examples of her emotionally abusing her children, not physically, but emotionally abusing them, that it could go on and on. But one of the ones that really made me sad, for example, one of the videos that she did post was when she got a phone call from the school. Her 6-year-old daughter had forgotten her lunch at school, and the teacher had contacted her and asked her if she could bring lunch to the school because she didn't have anything to eat for lunch. And Frankie was like, no, she told me she packed her lunch. It's her responsibility to pack it, and she knows better. I'm not going to go to the school and deliver her lunch. I'm not doing that. She's blatantly saying this to a camera too. Like, she's openly admitting this to us. What? Insanity. And then she gets off the phone with the teacher, who probably is extremely uncomfortable because she's like, oh my gosh, I have a kid that's not going to eat at lunch while everybody else is going to be eating. And now what do I do? And the mom's like, I really hope the teacher does not give her any food. I hope no kids give her any food. I hope nobody gives her food. That way she learns to pack her lunch. She's 6. She's 6. I don't know when I started packing my lunch, but it was not freaking 6. And then, of course, she was like, oh, guys, like, don't worry. When she got off the bus, like, I totally fed her. That is stuff that sticks with your child. Those are things that they remember. And I would completely remember that as a kid, because that would make me think my mom really doesn't care about me, doesn't love me, doesn't value me. And when I don't do exactly what she says, I don't even know how she's going to punish me. You're just setting your kid up for psychological warfare.
This happens quite often when you're raising children, because I know that her teacher is uncomfortable with her being hungry and not having a lunch. And it would ease her discomfort if I came to the school with a lunch. But I responded and just said, Eve is responsible for making her lunches in the morning, and she actually told me she did pack a lunch. So the natural outcome is she's just going to need to be hungry. And hopefully nobody gives her food.
There's so many. Her son, for instance, when he pranked his younger brother, had to sleep in the living room in a beanbag for 7 months. She said that he could have had a blow-up mattress if he wanted it, but he opted for the beanbag. But basically, he got his room taken away from him because he told his brother that they were going to Disney World, and they weren't. I think that's just kind of funny. I mean, I just thought it should have been a lot worse.
The bedroom was taken away for 7 months, and then you give it back like a couple weeks ago.
I don't think our viewers know that.
You've been sleeping on a beanbag.
I've been sleeping on a beanbag since October, and they gave my room back like 2 weeks ago. Oh, I'll give you the reason why I lost my bedroom. I think so. I think this is the reason. At least this is the reason that's been in my head. It's pretty funny, but now that I look back, I mean, it's pretty depressing.
No, we never told our viewers.
That I woke Russell up at 2 in the morning and told him that we're going to Disneyland and he has to pack. And he got up and made his bed all neatly and then packed all his clothes in a suitcase. And then he walked out the door and I'm like, Russell, he's like, what? And he's all happy.
And another thing that was really sad is in watching these videos, they talked about many times how their phones were taken away for months at a time. They had no friends. They had no one to hang out with. They were basically going to school at least and getting to socialize with other people, but they didn't really have a lot of friends. And I feel like that is a conditioning tactic done by parents that are trying to control the situation and mentally tear their child down. They're not going to understand what true love and compassion in a family household should revolve around because they got her for a mom. We all know that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So I'm sure that Ruby may have endured some similar things as a child herself. And then basically she had these kids and then she just did it to them. Because history does tend to repeat itself. It's not an excuse, but it does tend to happen. And you might have been conditioned to think that this was right and then you just push it onto your kids. But really it's not. Making your children malnourished that could potentially lead to death is not okay. But basically you get the gist of it. So we talked about how she stopped doing her YouTube channel, The 8 Passengers, and moved on to doing a podcast, but they were still posting videos on YouTube with her business partner, Jody, who is a licensed therapist. A licensed therapist who had her license suspended for exposing one of her patients to the Mormon church. She told the Mormon leader that one of her patients was addicted to porn. And obviously that is patient and client confidentiality, and she failed. So they suspended her license. And then she decided to get on YouTube and a podcast with her friend and talk about how their mental health and what their curriculum revolves around and their principles and their counseling services and blah, blah, blah. And Frankie's child was locked up in your home, Jody. Your home. And you're a licensed therapist. I would love for you to explain your therapy tactic for that one. In total, 4 of Frankie's children were removed from the home and placed into child protective services. All this happened. The oldest daughter, Frankie's oldest daughter, Sherry, posted on Instagram, even though she would not speak to authorities or to news outlets. She posted on her Instagram story, finally, justice is being served. So clearly she doesn't love her mother. She's 20 years old and she's off at college and she's estranged from her mom. So she didn't really want to be around her at all. She didn't appreciate how she was treated as a child, and it definitely shows when she was like pumped that her mother was in jail. Her 3 sisters also responded after her arrest, and they said how happy they were that she was in prison because it was time. She needed to go to jail and justice needed to be served. And that the sisters knew that the children were being abused, and the reason why they never came out was because they were trying to protect the children and I guess keep them, from protected services. I don't know, but they said that it was for the children's sake why they never said anything. But they stated that they made sure throughout those years to keep the kids safe regardless. And they never elaborated on what they meant by that. Just like anything, if you've been on the internet since 2015, speculations have occurred throughout the years. So in 2020, there was a petition for change.org to try to bring to light some of these family vlogs and people that were potentially abusing their children or extorting their child. And one of the petitions was to get rid of 8 passengers. They also mentioned that they wanted child protective services to come out to the home and check on them. So people were already starting to notice on the internet that things didn't seem right. And the neighbors also did call child protective services, I think, a couple of times. One of the times, child protective services came out and knocked on the door. No one was home, so they left. Another time that they came by, they did talk to the children for about 2 hours, but nothing really was done past that. I'm sure that they were frightened to say anything or to mention that they needed help, especially if the parents were present or the mom was present. But it just means that neighbors and YouTube subscribers, people that follow the channel, people that lived in the neighborhood were concerned about these kids, and they definitely had reasons to be. One of the neighbors even said, I was happy to know that they're not going to be coming out in body bags. But I think things started to hit head about last year because Frankie decided that she was going to pull her children out of school. And she kicked her husband out also. So Kevin, her husband, was no longer living in the household. They had been separated for 13 months when she was arrested. She was seen leaving her kids' public school. Well, I guess she wasn't seen. She was vlogging on the way out of her kids' school, saying that she didn't want them to be a part of a TikTok flash mob because the music was against God's morals. You are putting your kids in harm, and you're frightened for them to listen to what God does not say is good moral music. Make it make sense, because it doesn't make sense. Once Ruby Frankie's husband was removed from the home, neighbors started to notice that she would just leave her young children for weeks at a time. And she actually started to put up like newspapers on the windows, like make more of the home private where you couldn't really see in. Probably because she didn't want people to know that, hey, I'm going to leave my kids unattended for weeks at a time. So neighbors said that one of her children, I think it was the female, one of her daughters, was actually trying to go door to door to neighbors to find playmates, which is really sad, just something to do. And they would respond, well, sorry, our kids are at school. But Ruby thought that the worst pain for kids is to pull them out of school and for them to clean baseboards, because that is how they really learn. And she said that in the video too. Kevin, the husband. Where's Kevin? Kevin! Where's Kevin? Obviously, Kevin was in the household. Kevin did lawyer up, as he should have, because people are going to come for him too. He was actively on the YouTube channel, in videos with her, and agreed with her, whether he said he agreed or didn't agree. He was allowing her to say whatever she wanted to into the camera, and he wasn't going against it. So I do think that he was definitely a part of it. His lawyer is claiming that he is a gentle soul and he's a good man, and he had no idea the amount of abuse that these kids were obtaining from their mom. And his main priority now is to get the 4 kids back in his custody and in safe care. But you're married to this woman for how long? And you're telling me that, like, you didn't notice the abuse that was taking place? Maybe you should rephrase that. Maybe you didn't see the physical abuse, but you definitely knew that she was emotionally abusing these kids, and that her tactics of disciplinary action was extremely questionable, and you allowed her to take complete control of the household to the point that in most of her videos, if her kids were not cleaning the room or doing what they needed to do, they weren't eating. Like, that was her form of punishment. In one of the videos, they had a flip phone, and the father took the flip phone from the son and read off his text messages at the dinner table. You could tell the kid was completely shutting down, and it was embarrassing him. And so I'm like, Kevin, you're not completely innocent. He was present in the home when her son was sleeping out in the living room for 7 months. He was present when she was not bringing her child lunches. You're telling me that this guy was not watching these YouTube videos, seeing the amount of money that they were making, paying attention to what they were doing. I mean, he was present through a lot of the things that went down.
Program where he's going to spend the next 8 to 10 weeks living in the
Anasazi Desert.
He'll be out. So you're probably wondering, what did Chad do? Okay, we're not even going to entertain that stuff, but it's an accumulation of things over years.
I mean, you have to man up in the fact that you were married to this woman, you lived in this household with her, and if you saw things that were questionable and you allowed it to happen, you were part of the problem. And unfortunately, I do not think that Ruby's going to be the only family vlog that faces some of these similar charges in the future. I think the more people put themselves on the internet and allow people into their lives, the more questioning that everybody is going to be about these family vlogs. People want to protect children, and they're going to want to protect their safety. So I think that kids just shouldn't be exposed on the internet without some laws and regulations into play. I think we have to really take into consideration them instead of ourselves, but money speaks, and especially when she saw herself gaining all that popularity, I'm sure it just gave her more drive to want to keep going. The counts held against her, each count could potentially lead her to 15 years imprisonment, and she'll have to pay like $10,000 when she gets out. So her sentencing could be up to 15 years. I really don't know if she'll get that, but I do think that justice needs to be served, and I do think that she needs to learn from this. All right, now with the latest updates. Last Friday, on September 8th, Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Frankie were to appear in court virtually for their hearing. And that virtual hearing actually got linked to TikTok and then got flooded by over 1,000 people trying to be a part of this hearing. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I'm invested in the case. If I would have found that link, I probably would have clicked on it. Sorry. Curiosity, what can I say? Well, obviously, it ended up causing things to crash, and now they have moved the hearing to September 21st. But one of the things that I definitely wanted to address on what Frankie had to say about her, one of her children. When she was appearing in Provo, Utah court, allegedly said that one of her children that she would not name names on at the age of 3 started looking at pornography. That would lead to them one of their siblings. And then it would lead to over 20 people would be assaulted by one of her children. And this all came to light back in May. And I just think it seems a bit convenient. I'm not saying that this did not happen because I have no idea. I have no idea. But it does seem a bit convenient because she waits to say this after she's been arrested. And mind you, the lady was in Jody's house taping videos while 2 of her children were tied up, and she was making videos. And now conveniently, she's saying that her children are not great kids. I just think something should have been done. And you bring it up now while you're in jail and you're locked up. Is that going to be your reasoning behind? Is that going to come into play as to why you have treated some of your children the way that you've treated them? She's setting us up for the reasonings behind it by saying what she said about one of her children in court. She's put everything out on the internet. It's going to be definitely used against her. It's out everywhere. And some of these kids, when everything is said and done, could potentially seek compensation for all they endured from her. They could sue her. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what September 21st brings about. It is sad that it took over a dozen times for finally something to come of it, for these kids to finally be taken away from her, for them to finally be hopefully brought to safety and working on recovering from a traumatic upbringing. But what do you think? Do you think that this is deserving? Do you think that Ruby Frankie deserves to be in jail? Do you think that she was truly abusing her children? Do you think that Kevin Frankie knew what was going on and just turned a blind eye, or was he really a part of it? And do we think that she is going to be sentenced? And if so, how many years do you think? So comment below. Let's keep this an open-end discussion, but be freaking nice, please. That's all I ask. Just be nice. I am going to end the video with, I love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want everyone to stay safe, stay kind, and stay alert. And take care of yourself because we all need to. All right, until the next video, I love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye.
A year ago, my daughter was saying her prayers, said the cutest thing. I thought it was so cute. And I started laughing. She said, "Dear Heavenly Father, please help me to survive."